I wasn't anticipating to see anything that impressive from the newest Doom that just launched. Simply put, I've never had that distinctive a taste for reboots. I probably wasn't the first to be convinced that because of the sheer havoc this game wrestled with just to get a teaser trailer launched, the conditions were lined up for Doom to be ephemeral and scarce of redeeming qualities. Honestly, I've never been so excited to be proven wrong in my entire life. I'm deciding not to go into that much explanation into the multiplayer game modes just because it's the branch of the game that I know the least about, and therefore have the least to say about. All I can say is that it's predictably frenetic, making haste around corridors trying to blast the other team before that team blasts you. From what little I've played from it, it's pretty fun. The first thing about this game was probably something most people didn't even consider or think too much about. The beginning cutscene is literally you relinquishing yourself from your own imprisonment and marrying a poor demon's literal face hole with the heavy side of a table. And then the game just starts up. You're armed with a pistol, and how you dispose of the horrendous hellspawn trash in front of you is entirely up to the player. The difficulty curve is painstakingly satisfying to pound through, and the game does a pretty great job at making you feel like the undisputed King of Mars for the first hour of the game before throwing you a curveball or five and thoroughly pushing your shit in repeatedly. It's a game that definitely punishes you for even the slightest mistakes, but it's a factor that does the game justice, I think, because it's never something unfair or out of left field. If you died, chances are you just made a few too many mistakes and rightfully got your ass handed to you by Hellboy over here. I can take the video duration well into the 2-hour mark, venerating the smooth and fluent combat flow and how in control I feel when wielding a gun bigger than I am, which you'd think would subtract from the control. But the beauty really starts to shine through when you begin to look at the underbelly beneath the surface of the game's abrasiveness when it comes to violence and gore. There's actually a story, and it's actually kind of tolerable if you so choose to be interested. See, the game has limited supporting characters, and so there isn't too many places in which the story can travel down. But this game knows precisely what it is. You're playing as a super-powered marine warrior with a score to settle with hell's local flavor and a tendency to give less fucks than a Catholic nun. If anything, the combat strikes an impressive balance between relentless and forgiving. If you're a little scarce on shotgun shells, there always seems to be a crate around the corner or some chainsaw fuel you can use to gut an imp or two to score some free ammo. This plays into the increasingly relentless pace of the game because there's always that moment where you take a glance at your inventory and a little bit of shit comes out because you've just realized you're about to go after a demon army with 15 bullets and a hologram. Sometimes the game does you a solid and blesses you with a fresh stockpile of ammunition, and other times the game quite literally tells you to go fuck yourself and be grateful with what you currently have and that your head isn't being used as a demonic basketball at the moment. If it wasn't for the oversized logo taking up half the cover space on the box, you could be forgiven for mistaking this as an ecstasy simulator. I finally beat the game earlier this afternoon, and I can still feel the foot in my ass. But I do believe labeling it as just another standard run-of-the-mill run-and-gun game is a disservice to how it actually works. Shockingly, the game demands strategy over simply taking a gun and shooting your way out of every situation. Certain power-ups would appear in-game during combat, and suddenly it became a debate on whether you should use the power-up now and go on ahead and vanquish the current wave of enemies quickly, or leave it alone for what for sure could be a forthcoming ass-kicking. There are small discrepancies between each new adversary that forces the player to tweak their fighting style in which it previously worked. For instance, don't get used to your foes being tethered to the ground as target practice for too long, because there are hovering enemies as well with much more extensive ranges of mobility. They're harder to target, and just like any new enemy, they'll probably kick the shit out of you the first time you fight them. While we're on the subject of being in control of things, Doom has this new wicked cool feature that allows the player to go outside of all the action going on in single player mode and hop into something called Snap Map. It blows me away how user-friendly this is. The only comparison that comes to mind when I spend hours of my time building my own levels that I swear could have been good enough to make it into the final cut is Halo's Forge system that, within reason, allows you to pretty much do the same thing. And I think that's a good thing. You have your rudimentary level building corridor walkways that highlight a course for the player to follow, but the details go further in than that. If you feel like adding in some fire spouts bursting through a destroyed pipe, or tossing around a few barrels and crates to make the building look more dilapidated, you can do so. It also involves the setting up of AI parameters, the lighting of a certain area, controlling when demons spawn. It's insanely convoluted, and it's a pretty effective way to chew up a good few hours of your day. Argent Facilities has a nice little Google mock-up kind of software that educates the player on the hellspawn they've been putting away the entire game. The dossier gives you some pretty well thought out lines of narrative about the weapons you're using and the demons you've killed. I want to call it contradictory, but I don't believe that's the word for it. Anyone who picked up the game in the first place, first and foremost, is here to give hell their middle finger and nothing more or less. But in addition to the pervasive carnage, the player is presented with this duality between intelligently written progression of the story and just plain old ruining someone's day with a shotgun. Whatever you may be looking for in a video game, Doom has all of its fronts unequivocally covered damn well. Please leave a like and share us with someone who might think about buying the game. If you purchased the game and didn't like it, feel free to argue with your friend in the comments section below. See you next week.